Unlike the remakes of films like Prom Night, or The Hills Have Eyes, or The Stepfather, or The Texas Chainsaw Massacre, or Friday the 13th, or Halloween, or Halloween 2, or Black Christmas, or The House on Sorority Row, the 2010 remake of George A. Romero's The Crazies actually feels like it has a reason to exist. It has none of those films' cheap tawdriness. It feels in no way like a cash-in. It's got no teenagers in it. It's got no boobs, and it's got no nu metal on the soundtrack. It just has a Johnny Cash song to kick things off, an hour and a half of paranoiac craziness, and a suitably dark ending. It goes so far, in fact, to avoid being lumped in with those crappy remake films that at times it actually feels kind of slow, which is usually something that you mention as a negative about a film, but in this film, that's actually kind of refreshing. It feels nice to space things out a little bit. The remake was directed by a guy named Breck Eisner, who gets my vote, one man, one vote, for having the worst name of all time. Because you got the first part, the Breck part, which not only sounds like puking, but also sounds like the kind of guy that would hang out with Chad and Todd and Kent and Chent and Chod at the country club. And you got the last part, Eisner, which sounds exactly like the last name of someone that's the son of former Disney CEO Michael Eisner, which he is. Regardless, he made a great movie which surprised the hell out of me, coming as it does on the tail end of so many needless remakes. And you should definitely go see it. Unless you love those remakes that I was talking about earlier, because apparently some people do. The film takes place in the small town of Ogden Marsh, Iowa, where something goes wrong that gradually turns the residents, one at a time, into crazy, homicidal maniacs with nosebleeds. And the story quickly devolves into being the story of the escape from the town of the town sheriff, who's played by Timothy Olyphant, with his wife and a deputy. There are hints earlier on that the story might be bigger in scope. We meet the town drunk and his family, we meet the mayor, but really it narrows down very quickly to just being one long, prolonged escape, which is still pretty fun to watch, but the film misses out on all of that small town character stuff, which would have been great, because it's a great setting and it's a great setup for a character-driven horror film. This is an episode of Watch This Instead, by the way, on thesubstream.com. I'm Mike, if I didn't mention that earlier. Branding purposes. One film that gets this aspect exactly right is the overlooked 2007 adaptation of Stephen King's novella, The Mist, which was directed by Frank Darabont. Sure, it has some goofy moments, but it's a way better film than most of the people that didn't see it, of which there are literally billions of people, gave it credit for. It kind of takes that idea of a small town, an encapsulation of a small town anyway, where put in a really tense, sci-fi, kind of legitimately okay, goofy, but still powerful situation, and watches as they grind against each other and where the cracks form. It's a really neat bit of character work in the guise of sci-fi horror filmmaking. And that's something that the Crazies could have done, and it feels kind of missing that element. Of course, if you don't want to watch either of those two kind of semi-sophisticated, semi-character-driven horror films, and you just want to watch something that's funny and goofy and gory and ridiculous and a little bit scary, go rent the semi-continuation, the long way around, unofficial, half-official, very long story, read it on Wikipedia, continuation of George A. Romero's Night of the Living Dead, The Return of the Living Dead, which was directed by the very, very underrated Dan O'Bannon in 1985. It has a great soundtrack. It's got the Cramps on it, and it stars a bunch of punks fighting against a bunch of zombies, and it's great. It's got an unseriousness and a wackiness that modern horror filmmakers or modern horror film remakers, I don't know, consider passé or not serious, or maybe that it won't make them any money. And that's a shame, because that whole series is great, especially the original. Just like the Crazies and just like The Mist. Have a good weekend. Go Canada Hockey, go.